Good afternoon. I'd like to call this Senate Finance and Appropriations Committee meeting to order. This committee meeting is scheduled to give members of the Senate that do not currently serve on this committee the opportunity to speak to their member budget amendment requests. Committee staff will be sharing the budget amendments on the screen, and they can also be accessed from the state budget page. I will first be recognizing those senators who are here on the floor to make their presentations, and then anyone who is with us electronically. I would also like to say we, as usually is the case, have a very difficult job ahead of us. We have had 450 amendments introduced that total $5.6 billion. We obviously don't have that kind of money, so we will be making some very difficult choices. And with that, I would like to recognize Senator Spruill, who will be followed by Senator Chase.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The first item is 183, just 2S, North State University. Page 228, after line 34. This amendment allows for an exception to charge out-of-state students the full cost of education. The university is seeking to hold out-of-state undergrads tuition costs at the 2019-2020 rate until the in-state graduates' enrollment rebound. The next one, Madam Chairman, is item 183-3S, North State University, page 227, line 12. This item provides $262,500 from the general fund per year. Position is response to the demand for mental health service for the university. COVID-19 has served to underscore the need for increased funding to support a heightening of students' demand. The funding supports 2 case managers, a wellness coordinator, and after-hour crisis line, and the center supply for students as telecounseling for faculty and staff. Next, Madam Chairman, is item C. 17-880-1, Norfolk State University Capital Project. This amendment provides $1.2 million general fund to purchase and renovate property, background equipment, security, phone supplies for preschool academics. For more than 40 years, Norfolk State University preschool program has helped thousands of families and children throughout Hampton Roads by providing a safe and nutritious environment to learn and grow. Next one, Madam Chairman, is item C, 17.75-1S, Norfolk State University. This amendment provides authorization for 9C revenue bonds for construction of a new dining facility at Norfolk State University. Norfolk State University 44,404 square foot Scott Dozier Dining Hall was built in 1982, and the 18,603 square foot West Campus Cafe was built in 1974 to accommodate the existing dining needs of the campus. Over the intervening years, the campus has been substantial growth in students with faculty and staff. There has been a modern renovation through the years in order to adjust for the new needs. However, the fundamental issue of growth and fundamental use have not been addressed in these renovations due to the constraints of growth and fundamental use have not been addressed in these renovations. Next, Madam Chairman, is item 402, item number 4, public safety and homeland security. This amendment provides $50,000 from the general fund in the second year to the correction special reserve fund to reflect the estimated impact on the utilization of beds in the Commonwealth Adult Correction Center, resulting in change in criminal sentence pursuit. Next, Madam Chairman, is item 303, number 4, health and human resource. Page 336, item line 18. This item provides $6.2 million the second year for the general fund to build a 20-bed inpatient psychiatric unit by the Chesapeake Regional Hospital. This facility is the only local-owned hospital in the Commonwealth. Funding will be used for the architectural and engineering fees, site preparation costs, equipment and furnishing, and roughly $4.2 million for construction. These additional beds would provide critical needs for psychiatric service in Chesapeake and the surrounding area. Last one, Madam Chairman, is item 313-12, Department of Health, Department of Medical Assistance Service. This amendment adds language. This one adds language to allow Lake Taylor Transitional Care Hospital, a non-state government-operated hospital located in Norfolk, Virginia, to provide the Commonwealth share of funding through an intergovernmental transfer process to procure supplemental payments from the Medicare program. This supplement program is similar to the one that's being used by Chesapeake Regional Hospital. Thank you, Madam Chair. That's it.
Thank you, Senator Spruill. Next is Senator Chase.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to begin with item 86, number 5S, from the Department of Elections, and this is page 84, line 35. This amendment provides $50,000 in the general fund. The second year is a placeholder for the potential fiscal impact associated with legislation to restore voter identification photo ID here in Virginia. The second item, item 137, number 4S, has to do with the voucher program implementation from the Virginia Department of Education. This is page 135, line 32. This amendment provides $50,000 to the general fund the second year as a placeholder for the potential fiscal impact associated with legislation that would create an education voucher for our parents who are forced to try to educate their kids full-time and also work full-time. Those monies that are budgeted by the state would be put in an education voucher and be used to offset expenses in the form of alternative education. So that would be set up for the voucher system and allow parents to use that money toward a private school or some type of homeschooling or tutoring. Just parents already having to take on that tremendous burden, especially if they have multiple kids. The next item is item 145, number 16S, which is direct aid for technology and internet service provision. This amendment provides $50,000 to the general fund in the second year as a placeholder for the potential fiscal impact associated with legislation related to providing of required technology and internet service during mandatory virtual learning. Many of our localities have had to go 100% online, and a lot of the parents that I'm talking to do not have access to broadband, especially in the rural areas such as Southwest Virginia, Amelia, and part of the district that I currently represent. And I just want to make sure that if the students are being asked to complete an online class, that they have the resources and the availability to meet what they've been asked to do, so that they don't, the parent doesn't end up, as one of my supporters, constituents across Virginia actually had criminal charges filed against her because of truancy, because her son did not have access to the internet, and that's just tragic. Item 145, number 17S. Wait a minute, I think I just did that one. Item 273, number 3S. This is a budget amendment which seeks to exempt personal income tax for our retired veterans and all military retirement pay and survivor benefit program payments. I think there's going to be more of a fiscal impact than the $50,000 that they have allocated here. I think it's more like $6 million. It's a huge price tag, Madam Chair, but I think that we should be competitive with other states that do exempt military retirement pay for our veterans, so that they stay in Virginia. My understanding is Virginia is the #1 employer of our military and our veterans, and I would love to see them retire and stay in Virginia. And that completes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Chase. Next up is Senator McPike, and then Senator Mason after him.
Madam Chair, I don't see Senator McPike. This is Senator Mason.
Okay, then Senator Mason, and after you, Senator Mason, will be Senator Boysko.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Madam Chairman, if I could just start with item C69, number 1S. This is an attempt to show you I'm not completely clueless, or to show you that I indeed am coming in here asking for $35 million. This is a $28 million capital supplement to replace Chesapeake Bay Hall at the Virginia Institute of Marine Science. Back in 2018, they got permission to, or they got authorization to replace it, but with a number that turned out to be grossly inadequate. The walls, the outer walls and inner walls don't have a protective layer. They have black mold. They can't heat and cool it. So this $28 million is an effort that they've worked with the Division of Engineering and Buildings to try to shave $4 to $7 million off the cost, but this is the total supplement needed to replace the building, ma'am. So I wanted to start with the big one and then go to number 168, number 3S. This was allotted money last year. This is the Virginia Institute of Marine Science. They do saltwater fisheries surveys every year. I'm sorry, I beg your pardon, 168, number 3S. And we attributed the money, but then unallotted the money. So unfortunately, this is a matching program, and the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission uses these surveys and quotas to give us the quota to the fishing industry. So we're trying to get this money reallotted so we can complete the surveys, or we go back to doing them and try to make sure that Virginia fishermen get the quotas allotted that they needed. 168, number 2S. Is also unallotted money that was approved in the original budget. This is a study of just emerging threats and diseases that come. It could be things that come over on ships in the ballast of a ship from Europe. They constantly study to see what's coming and impacting our fisheries. Number 160, number 1S, and number 168, 1S. 161S will give you the gist. It's money at William and Marion at VIMS, focused on trying to recruit and hire underrepresented minority faculty, particularly postdoctoral researchers in data science at William and Mary and in marine sciences at VIMS. Very difficult to find this population. We're trying to diversify our faculty. 157, number 1S, and 156, 2S, again, same gist. 157, 1S, this is the captain's program at Christopher Newport, where they work with high schoolers and community colleges to try to promote students, underprivileged students coming to Christopher Newport, and support them. One key about that, Madam Chair, is that all of these students are Virginia students. And so it is an in-state program there. Then Madam Chair, with 339, number 5S, this is us going to school on COVID, 339, number 5S. Last year, we put $1 million in the budget to try to help with traumatic brain injury, where we all know we're grossly under-resourced. This, they determined because of COVID, they couldn't do their clubhouse in-house. So they started doing Zoom. I actually participated in one where 2 or 3 of the participants had never been to the clubhouse before. You okay, Madam Chair?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. And so they were able to expand their services to people that had never come in person because they were not comfortable doing so. So this $1 million is an attempt to reach more regions, same type of FTE, but more regions, and utilize technologies and the things they've learned at COVID to try to expand their services. Madam Chair, this is one that we funded in the Senate last year, number 354, number 2S, that died on the vine in the other chamber. And this is a kinship guardian assistance program. The federal kinship program is onerous in that you have to be a foster family. This reduces some of the rigid requirements and is trying to get, so these are children that have been in foster care for more than 90 days, and we're trying to place them with a relative or fictive kin. What we did this year, instead of asking for the full number that they dreamed up last year, is put $500,000 on it and say this would allow them to serve up to 100 kids, which their numbers support. No way we get to 100 kids between July 1 and June 30, but this would be capped if we did, and I hope we do. But this is an effort to us get this program going, stood up in Virginia, and then push HHR to have it in the outgoing governor's budget. 350, number 4S, is one that I've worked with Senator Boysko as the chair of the Broadband Advisory Commission. We talk about access to broadband, but affordability has become one of our biggest keys here. And so what we've done is ask for $150,000. The gentleman that was just briefing the subcommittee in finance talked about the federal money that's going to broadband. That's a short-term, like 6-month program. This would, after that kicked in, the federal government gives you $9.25. This would augment that to get to what is the lowest one we can find, $15 to serve households. We would work through DSS. Since they have SNAP and TANF information, we could serve households. This would allow us to pilot the program to between 1,000 and 2,000 households in the next year. And again, with an eye of getting the structure in place in the next fiscal year and coming back in a full budget and funding it. Item number 340, number 2S, is an effort for us to find a contract employee to work as a demographer for the Departments of Aging and the agencies on aging. This is trying to help us find, interpret census, populations, morbidity, get a lot of data that's associate, because last year we asked for the Joint Commission of Finance to review this, but I'll segue that into my language, which is item 1, number 3S. In 1999, JLARC produced a report that said we really ought to focus on providing higher services to our aging population. There's one member of that commission, Senator Norman, that's still here. After 2 decades, he's asked me to carry the torch and try to do something about it here. So this is a budget amendment that creates a joint subcommittee on aging to discuss governments, opportunities to expand, and how we should look at it on go forward. And finally, Madam Chair, item C72, number 1S. Last year, the General Assembly approved $40 million for infrastructure upgrades at the Virginia port to focus on one offshore wind scenario. So as they've been moving along, that's C72, number 1S, I apologize. As they've been moving along, they determined that one project didn't need the entire $40 million. So what this is asking to do is to come back and say that we can use that money to support multiple projects that augment and accentuate our offshore wind efforts. It would still have to be approved by the Port Authority Board of the Commissions and the MEI project approval. But this was them coming back saying we didn't need all that money, but there are other places that we could put it in place and continue to focus and expand our offshore wind effort. Madam Chairman, I thank you and the committee for the time.
Thank you, Senator Mason. Next up is Senator Boysko, who will be followed by Senator McPike.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've got 3 budget amendments today, and only one of them has a fiscal impact, so I think you're going to like them. The first is item 72, number 2S. It is at the request of Fairfax County government to put language in that says the current to explain it, the current formula for distributing funding for Commonwealth's attorney's offices focuses on felony indictments and sentencing events in circuit court, and it doesn't account for the real work that's going on related to our diversion programs, our specialty dockets aimed at keeping people out of the criminal justice system and keeping them from felony sentences. So I have a bill that's SB 1226 that would create a new funding formula that would reflect the goal to provide support for efforts to create a more equitable criminal justice system that would improve outcomes for the entire community. And the language says that adequate funding should be provided to the Compensation Board in fiscal year 2022 to implement this change and appropriately fund the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office while ensuring that no Commonwealth's Attorney's Office loses funding as a result of this new formula. And again, there is no anticipated additional cost. This is a language-only amendment. The second one was a request, item 3093S, and it is dealing with our advanced practice nurses. Here in Virginia, the Department of Health Professions regulates the practice of 4 different types of advanced practice registered nurses who have graduate preparation in specialty areas of health care. These include registered nurse anesthesists, nurse practitioners, nurse midwives, and clinical nurse specialists. Over the year, the statutory language governing the practice of those nurses has categorized them all as though they are all nurse practitioners, which they are not, as well as regulating them under the joint boards of nursing and medicine. So this budget language would have the Department of Health Professions undergo a study of the current code and regulations governing the practice of these advanced practice nurses. As part of the study, the department would gather data on the current regulations in other states, recommendations by the National Council of State Boards of Nursing, a national nursing regulatory entity, and make recommendations for potential amendments to the current law governing the advanced practice nurses. There is no fiscal impact to this. Licensing fees will cover the operation of the Department of Health Professionals, and the impetus of this amendment came from a conversation with department staff and 4 advanced practice nursing associations. The final one does have a fiscal impact. It is budget item 322, 3S, dealing with our Marcus Alert legislation that we passed this past special session. You know that we created an additional requirement for community services boards and law enforcement in order to better assist individuals who may be experiencing a behavioral health crisis. In order to support those requirements, the General Assembly allocated $3 million for the first 5 sites that will have to develop and implement new protocols in December of 2021. It stands to reason that in addition to an additional $3 million will be needed allocated for every 5 sites that come online, because otherwise the funding will have to be carved out of existing STEP Virginia funds. The second set of 5 sites is scheduled to come online in July 1st, 2023. While the inclination may be to include funding for those sites in fiscal year 23 through actions in the 22 General Assembly session, the Virginia Association of Community Services Boards believes that the money should be included in the fiscal year 22 so that once the next 5 sites are identified, they can immediately begin to develop the protocols, getting the approvals, and begin putting the appropriate resources in place. The timeline for the initial implementation of the Marcus Alert is very compressed, and these funds of $3 million will help the community services boards meet the objectives timely. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Boysko. Senator McPike?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will be brief. I have a number of amendments to go with you. The first, 01S, is in relation to sunsetting the coal tax credits, so language only. 75-2S is in relation to also the Marcus Alert, but after the study is completed this upcoming July, is to direct the Compensation Board to review the service levels of requirements as a request of the sheriff's offices. So this would be a study and review based on the recommendations of the work group with the report due July 1 of this year. The next, 97-4S. Through COVID, I sort of looked around to what innovations were occurring and what really worked well. This is funding a pilot throughout Planning District 8, so Northern Virginia, and it seeks to provide a framework. In Prince William County, a local nonprofit launched a Prince William Food Rescue app in 2019, and in 18 months, they were able to register over 2,000 app users, food rescue, basically volunteers. They completed 11,170 rescues. That's over 760,000 pounds of food. They were able to redistribute over that time period roughly 10 million pounds of food to 78 food distribution sites every week. And so this is a process that really applies innovation and technology and volunteers. And the plan is for them to expand to 5 other localities using the technology platform and app to leverage volunteer resources and better connect interjurisdictional resources into food resiliency, Madam Chair. The next I want to point out to you is 114, number 8S. And this is Virginia Coalfield Economic Development Authority broadband. A part of the Coalfield tax credit does, as a portion, reduce the funding to the Economic Development Authority, and certainly one of the keys in this region is also not only just hard to reach for broadband, but almost impossible. And so this, you might have saw on the news, Wise and Norton receiving satellite transmission or broadband. This doesn't specify a technology platform. However, it would give the Economic authority to look at innovations to make sure that the kids that have absolutely zero access in the hard-to-reach places, we begin to connect the dots with those funds. And Madam Chair, 3041S, lead water testing program. These are restoring funds that were approved in a bill and funded in our previous session and then removed during the COVID budget cycle. And so this seeks to restore those funds. Lastly, Madam Chair, 31335S. This has to do directly from a constituent issue and complaint from a facility that had received our state PPE and COVID relief funds, then went and charged my constituent literally $180 per day, $180 per day in PPP surcharge, and this facility had already received state and federal PPE relief. And so this seeks to ensure that if any of these facilities are receiving it, that they're not seeking externally overcharges also at the same time, Madam Chair, and appreciate the committee's consideration of these requests.
Thank you, Senator McPike. Senator Bell, did you want to speak?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have just a couple.
Okay, thank you.
Like me to proceed?
Yes.
The first one is item 3-2.03, number 1S. This one is a larger line item. It would actually extend the lottery's line of credit to allow for the transitioning of electronic gaming devices, VGTs, which would replace gray machines, and this goes along with Senate Bill 1407. I will tell the committee, while this is a decent amount of money that would be required to invest it, the projected revenue for the Commonwealth is $186 million that the Commonwealth would get on these terminals, and it would actually give us a pathway out of the gray machines, which I think, frankly, many small businesses have become addicted to. This also have 50 FTEs attached. Those wouldn't be needed right away. They would be needed at full implementation. So we're still working with the lottery folks to try to nail that down. The next item is item 321, number 5S, and this is one for recovery, Virginia Association Recovery Residences, and it's a companion from the Senate. From the House. It's a $10 million one for recovery that would be from the general funds. I will note during the pandemic, we have had a tremendous amount of people who've suffered from addiction. I chair the Substance Abuse Council, and this has been a great problem, particularly getting people who were incarcerated, who frankly were incarcerated mainly because of a addiction issue, getting them treatment so they don't go back on the streets and not treat the drug addiction, which will probably have them relapse. It's a large amount of money, but I believe we'll save plenty if we can get these people treated and back into good citizenship. Next item, item 145, number 6S. This is a Loudoun County bill, and it just actually adds money for the Planning District 8, and it adds money for adjacent divisions, specified in Appropriation Act, and it's one that David Reed is also carrying in the House, and again, it's a Loudoun County priority, gives funding for the park. The other items I think are all no fiscal impact. Item 134, number 1S, it was referred, it's a tourism authority, but that would all be private funds. It referred to Finance Committee, but again, it was only using business funds if they chose to participate, but no public funds would be extended there. Next item, 105, number 2S. Sorry if I'm going too fast for you up there. No fiscal impact expected. We just put in this just in case one came back. We didn't expect one. Again, don't think that there will be one, very limited chance. Next item, 374, number 6S. And this again addresses the park in Loudoun County, provides two positions. This park's already in existence. It was basically given to the county at a very reduced rate, and then the county gave it to the state, but it does need staffing. It's pretty much turnkey ready with facilities, but it's just a matter of staffing. Next item is 453, number 1S. And this addresses any fiscal impact of SB 1259, but there is no estimated fiscal impact on this bill, so there should be no money required. Next item, 448, number 2S. Again, this was a placeholder for a bill, SB 1260, and there's no fiscal impact, so not expected to need any funding there. Item number 87, 4S. Again, this is a placeholder for SB 1239. No fiscal impact expected. Item 373, number 5S, was again another $50,000 placeholder for SB 1280, and no fiscal impact was what came back on that as well, on the preliminary. Number 395, 1S. This is one that is for the alcohol to go bill. And the fiscal impact came back as a no budget amendment necessary. There was addressed some work that would be required in ABC. They have said that they could absorb, and they're already doing the work today. Item 57, number 2S. This is for corresponding for placeholder for SB 1410. And again, that has come back on the preliminary with no budget amendment necessary, no fiscal impact. 464, number 1S, another $50,000 placeholder. And this was for the administration bill, which is already covered in the budget, and it was one that provides assistance to help transitioning spouses of military service members into helping them transition to civilian life when they separate from the service. Madam Chair, that concludes all my bills. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Senator Bill. I'd like to ask April, are any members waiting to speak to us electronically?
Madam Chair, there's no one else on the Zoom call to speak to bill or amendments. Thank you.
Well, I guess then that completes our meeting. So the committee.
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
This is Senator Cosgrove. I'm not Zooming. I'm here.
I'm sorry, I didn't see
Oh, that's
you.
quite all right.
Oh, and
know, it's
Senator
unusual, isn't
D-Steff now, too. Okay.
Yeah.
Senator Cosgrove and then Senator D-Steff.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Basically, this is the same bill we had last year. It's a request for $10 million to complete the Nimmo Parkway road system that supports Dam Neck Naval Facility and connects Dam Neck with Oceana and some other military facilities. In addition, it would be of great help to be able to rebuild Building 2 where the shootings took place last year.
Thank you.
That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Okay, thank you. And my apologies to you and Senator DeStaff.
Oh.
Senator DeStaff, you're next, and then Senator Favola.
Madam Chair, thank you very much. Madam Chair, I have three budget amendments. The first one's item 131, number 1S. And that one is with all the issues we had at Virginia Employment Commission to provide them with $10 million to hire additional staff and to handle the influx and backlog of unemployment claims. But Madam Chair, members of the committee, it's not just to hire staff, it's for them to use it to hire consultants, hire staff, expand call centers, go with IT expansions, whatever they need to get their job done. And Madam Chair, I think that for the foreseeable future, it's going to take us a while to catch up with everything on VEC. And if it's a priority of ours, I think we should show that in the budget. So, Madam Chair, that's item 131, number 1S. My next one, Madam Chair, is item 303, number 5S. And this one is amending, this amendment provides $10 million for the general fund for the second year to support the Hampton Roads Proton Therapy Foundation. Madam Chair, what we found is the Hampton Roads Proton Therapy Foundation and machines and everything they're doing there has done an amazing thing for Hampton Roads with the way that they're approaching solving the cancer issues and treating cancer down there. We have folks coming not just from all over the state, but all over the country to Hampton University for those treatments. Madam Chair, my last budget item is item 426, number 1S. That's $1 million in the general fund to purchase body-worn cameras for the Virginia State Police. Madam Chairwoman, what we found was that during the pilot program, it was a huge success as that we found body cameras all over the state and country have been a huge success on both sides with our police and law enforcement while doing community policing and interacting with the public. Madam Chair, that's my three budget amendments, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Senator DeStaff. Senator Favola.
I'd like to take a moment to just maybe highlight 5 or 6 of my amendments. Many of my amendments were language only. And the first one I just want to mention is it appears the DSS has told us that we will be receiving funds from the Chafee program, the John Chafee federal program. And my language directs the department to ensure that those dollars are used to cover our foster youth who may be aging out of the fostering future, so they'd be turning 21, and they really can't age out of a program without a place to live and without some support during this really serious economic downturn. So my language says we need to use the federal money to support them through September 2021, and that is a budget amendment from the Commission on Youth. There's language, I have a language budget amendment in there that essentially says it directs the Department of Social Services to actually identify federal and state funding to set up a true diversion program so children who are known to our who are known to the local Department of Social Services to be at risk in their homes, we want to be able to divert them before they have to enter foster care, but dollars need to be available to actually help the relatives or victim kin. And then that's also a priority from the Commission on Youth. The third Commission on Youth budget amendment is to actually provide support to the Kinship Navigator program. This is a database that provides resources to our foster parents and our relative caregivers, and we're asking for $1.2 million starting in 2022. Okay, those three budget items, again, came out of the Commission on Youth as a result of studies and progress we all want to make towards providing a necessary safety net for our most vulnerable children. My few other budget amendments, I did put language in. DMAS and the Health Benefits Exchange are in agreement with this language, as is the Joint Commission on Healthcare. We want the probably the Joint Commission on Healthcare to actually look at what it would cost the state if we were to cover individuals up to 200% of poverty who seem to be fluctuating in and out of the insurance exchange because they have high bouts of unemployment. There are some federal dollars available. We don't seem to be pulling them down, so that's a report. I have language directing DMAS to work with SSI to identify ways to automatically enroll our Virginia SSI enrollees into Medicaid. And then the LIPOS program, I'm sure you've heard from other lawmakers. LIPOS is the local inpatient purchase services program. And the way the language initially read from the department, it looked like the money was going to be taken away from the regions and the department was going to disperse it. And that would be a problem. For Region 2, we have a very active CS, Community Services Board, in all of our localities in Region 2. That's the Northern Virginia region. We've developed relationships with providers. We've got great relationships with the hospitals. When we discharge patients, we do have treatment programs available to us in our localities, and we manage to arrange those treatment relationships through our LIPOS money. So I understand we may need flexibility at the state level, but please don't fix something that isn't broken at the local level. And last, but this is not least, and I know this is close to your heart, Madam Chair, I would like to restore funding at some level to increase the salaries of our benefits workers in our local Child Protective Service units. We did have dollars available way back in 2020, and we're asking for $2 million from the general fund and, of course, $2.1 million from non-general funds, because we can draw down dollars, federal dollars, to provide a minimum increase in fiscal year 2021 of 20%. Our benefit workers make very little money. We have high turnover. It's an extraordinarily stressful job, and we have to do something to really help them stay in the field and ensure that we can hire and retain quality people so we get the care our families and our children who have to depend on the state get quality care. That's it.
Thank you, Senator Favola.
You're welcome.
Next, and I believe last, is Senator Lewis.
There we go. Okay. Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. And I'm going to be very respectful of the committee's time. I know between the expertise of the committee members and then the staff, you've got a handle on all these, so I'll just run through and highlight them. First one I have, Madam Chair, is 446, number 5S. And this requires VDOT to report annually on the status of transportation infrastructure in the eastern region that is at risk from sea level rise. This is a language-only amendment, Madam Chair, and there has been a previous report of VDOT along with VIMS, who has been a study partner with VDOT in this effort, provided an update to my joint subcommittee on coastal flooding. And based on that discussion, I've introduced this language-only amendment to make sure that we are seeing these regular updates, and more importantly, that the local governments that are being impacted today are provided regular updates as well on the sea level rise issue. Number 459, number 1S, is an increase in the Waterway Maintenance Fund, which we created in 2018. It has been vastly oversubscribed. It is doing great work with dredging projects in coastal Virginia, and as I said, has been significantly oversubscribed, and so this money is desperately needed to continue the good work for economic development and keeping our waterways open in coastal Virginia. The next one is for Children's Hospital of the King's Daughters, and it's regarding indirect medical education reimbursement. And what this bill does, Madam Chair, I'm sorry, what this amendment does, Madam Chair, is address this problem. This amendment increases the case mix adjustment factor for indirect medical education reimbursement for HMO discharges to the greater fiscal 2019 levels or the most recent rebasing should it be higher. And this change is consistent with historic levels of state support prior to rebasing with comparable general fund impact. Again, very important to our area. Eastern Virginia Medical School, number 254, number 1S, restores unallotted base operating support that had been approved during the 2020 regular session. And then we go on, Madam Chair. There are two companion amendments, one 356, number 6S, and then 356, number 7S, that follow along with an item in Governor Northam's introduced budget last year, which was for two community centers in Northampton and Accomack County. And then finally, or almost finally, number 114, number 9S, this is a recommendation of the Broadband Advisory Council, Madam Chair, and this amendment would direct the Department of Housing and Community Development to create a pilot program within VADI with awards not to exceed 10% of total available VADI funds in fiscal year 22, to which public broadband authorities may apply without investment from the private sector. It's been a real discussion about whether we should, the involvement of public broadband authorities and their access to VADI. And so what this does is create a pilot program to see how that would work out. And again, that's an official recommendation of the Broadband Advisory Council, Madam Chair. Let me just see one more. I think the rest of it's pretty self-explanatory, Madam Chair. Yes, the rest of them are pretty self-explanatory, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Lewis.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Senator Peake. I think what happened is some committee or subcommittee just finished and people are showing up from that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Are you ready for me?
Yes, I am.
Thank you very much. I will start in the order we have them here. 78, number 2S, reclamation process at the Central Virginia Training Center. And as you are all aware, the state has shut down the training center in Amherst, Virginia. It was one of the last to go. And as a result of that, there's a water line that goes under or through the training center, serves the training center, and also goes at the other end of the training center, serves a private mobile home park. And now that the training center is not using that water line, water is sitting in that water line and rusting and is no longer fit, and we have residents on the other side of the training center who now do not have access to good, clean water. The County of Amherst, it's a $200,000 project, has put in 100, and so I'm requesting 100 to match the county to provide those citizens with clean drinking water. And should I just run through, Madam Chair?
Yes, please.
I have a feeling you don't have any questions.
No, we're not taking questions.
Okay, great. Infrastructure repair for Holiday Lake. This is a repeat. It was actually in last year's budget in the House and the Senate, and then it got struck due to the coronavirus striking of funds. This is a 4-H facility, very important updates for safety, and as I said, it made it through the House and the Senate last year. And then the next one is the $500,000 next year and the year after for cultural education at Sweetbriar. And I must tell the committee and Madam Chair that this was brought to me very late in the game. But what they have is they're trying to establish, they have an older building, and they want to start going through at Sweetbriar their history with African Americans, their history with Native Americans. We had a certain Native American branch in the area, and they would like to turn one of their buildings into the cultural center, and requesting this money for that. Then the next one, defeasance of bonds for Central Virginia Training Center, and I believe y'all dealt with that last year. It did not receive any money last year. Senator Newman carried it, and obviously it's a big ticket item, I understand. But what we have, Central Virginia Training Center is closed down. The county has that big gaping hole of 300 acres. There's a concern about remediation of the property and all of those things, but in addition, there is a certain amount of bonds, anywhere from 18 to $25 million in bonds, and we need to start defeasing that in order for the county to turn that over to a private entity or someone to come in and make it useful property. Then harmful algae bloom mitigation, and I've talked with y'all about this last year. Lake Anna has a lot of algae bloom, and we would like to get this study done. It's language only. I think some of the universities have indicated that they might get help, so we'd like to get that in there to keep the lake. I know a lot of folks from Northern Virginia use that lake, from all around the Commonwealth use that lake, and they have a significant problem with algae bloom. Then the next one, I'm co-signer on that, I believe, chief patron with Senator Reeves, and they are seeking some money to do law enforcement on Lake Anna. I believe they just an inordinate amount of lake traffic, and they need more funding to keep the lake safe for our citizens. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just got back from the bathroom, and so I'm just pulling myself together. I'm just going to run through these in numeric order, if that's acceptable. Yes, you have them right there. So the pilot program for assessing adverse childhood experiences. Madam Chairman, this was proposed by the Juvenile Court in Henrico County when we were looking at identifying a drug court that might be able to work at the juvenile level. We identified that there were very different variables in play that could motivate a child and a family to resolve that problem. And as the juvenile justices looked at it, they discerned that probably trauma was one of the most imperative issues in assessing those children, and that the court might need to adapt to that. And they believe that they should be doing trauma ACE assessments in the court to see if that could direct a better way to manage the children that were at risk. And most of these kids in juvenile court, let's be honest, have been traumatized, and maybe redirect a way to keep them from going to prison and find programs that actually worked. And they asked for a pilot program to be able to look at that. Of course, it would be considered throughout the state, but that is the first one, Madam Chairman. The second one is the Data Analytics Commission will hopefully be codified this year. Senator Barker is carrying that legislation, and they are always interested in looking at how solving problems for Virginia might cause cross-sections for different data trusts. And in this case, they would be looking at the ability, and this is something we've talked about before in this committee, of interconnecting education from pre-K all the way through to the workforce, and looking at aligning initiatives that children could use to figure out what they wanted to do, what jobs were available, how they got that education, and how they could pay for it. And the Data Commission was interested in looking at, there's no fiscal impact with this, it's language only, but looking at whether or not they could identify the data points they would need in a data trust to accomplish that. Let me see if this will just go forward for me. I apologize. The diagnostic assessment tool in 137-2S is a bill that just came out of committee that is looking at transitioning SOLs into 3 broken tests during the year. The first 2 would be diagnostic assessments to see where children were, so there was time to intervene before the assessment at the end of the year. That money may be available in the CARES Act for this year, but it would be needed going forward. 137.3 is another project for Data Commission to look at children with IEPs and how they're progressing and looking at what data points we might need for that. 138.1S is a budget amendment that is from the JLOC report. There's several language-only budget amendments, Madam Chairman, that are from the JLOC report on special education, and they complement the bill that was the recommendations for them in code. That's the next budget amendment as well. In fact, all of these 138, I'm going to go through those. So that's all of the 138s. Virtual education, Madam Chairman, the state commissioner, I am losing the word, but Dr. Lane was very inventive this year in being able to look at the virtual education system that they had for a small number of children, 5,000, and when all of the school systems had to transition to virtual education, he was able to use CARES Act money for that platform to be able to support virtual education, and all 132 school divisions in Virginia are currently using that system in some way. And going forward, we're going to have virtual education that doesn't go away. And again, there's potentially CARES Act money for this year, but going forward, we will need to be making an investment in that platform so virtual education can continue in Virginia. I'm going to skip language only, Madam Chairman. Is that acceptable?
Yes.
Thank you. Dual enrollment passport pilot grants. Madam Chairman, you remember the passport legislation that we passed that the community colleges and the 4 years work together to define the standard core curriculum of 30 credits that is universally recognized at all four-year institutions and at all community colleges so that children didn't have to duplicate those core curriculum credits and pay for them a second time. And this pilot program would incentivize school divisions, especially those that have fewer assets and challenges, and the language in this bill directs that specifically in this budget amendment, but this would allow them for high schools to begin to drop that curriculum back into the dual enrollment so that we actually had guaranteed college credits that were completed in high school, and you didn't have to question whether or not your 4-year would accept that going forward. Vaccine administration workforce, Madam Chairman, this is for the vaccine bill we all signed on today. I did not know. Most of that is just permissive language, but I didn't know if VDE would need anything, so that was a placeholder just in case they did. The next two are bills that we looked at in special session and we liked but thought would be better for full session. School-based reimbursement services. This is a bill that will be coming up next year, and if you'll forgive me for a minute, to explain this, cost-based reimbursement is how we pay for school-based services. School-based services are, say, speech therapy or therapeutic day treatments that children get if they have an IEP in school and those needs are identified. Currently, those school-based services are paid for by the localities 100%. They then send a itemized report or cost-based reimbursement report to DMAS, and DMAS then submits that to the federal government, who pays the federal portion of those Medicaid-based services, and so the locality gets 50% back. There is a way to change the language in our state plan to allow those school divisions to bill not only for school-based services that are offered for IEPs, but for any child, which would give the schools more money to offset their local portion. Since we don't pay the state portion of those services, it would offset the expenses that they have, and they will be able to itemize in their list, things like counseling and coordination for students, all Medicaid students, of course, but this is no cost to the state for all of those increased reimbursements. It's all general fund. The $500,000 placeholder in here is that in the process of doing that, because we do have reports that those services are not always accomplishing the outcomes we want for our children, DMAS would provide more oversight to ensure that the children are getting evidence-based programs that result in improved outcomes for them. And so I don't have a fiscal impact from DMAS on that yet, but that is what that holder is for. Permanent supportive housing, this is something we've talked about all the time. I had a specific request, especially with the addiction issues that we've had such a terrible spike with COVID, and so that is that. And auxiliary grants, Madam Chairman, is another problem that we've struggled with for so long. In particular, there are some ALFs or assisted living facilities in Virginia that have an extraordinarily high number of auxiliary grants as their residents, auxiliary grant recipients as their residents. And the auxiliary grants pay for less than half of the cost of those residents. And in COVID, these have been incredibly under incredible duress, especially when there has been decreased access to food banks and other resources they use to offset their costs. And so this was a way, knowing that the auxiliary grant budget amendment would be enormous in any way, to just target those charitable programs that are really providing care for our most at-need elderly in high volumes. Many of these assisted living facilities limit their auxiliary grant members to 2 to 3%, and some few out there are doing extraordinary work with 50% of their residents being there. So, Madam Chairman, that's all my budget amendments, and thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Senator Donovan. Now, so I don't blunder again, is there anybody else? Not seeing anybody, the committee will rise.